Hello everyone, this is Zeeebo and welcome to this AFK journey video. So in this AFK journey video, we're going to talk about the glorious hero chest once again. So as usual, a new season comes a brand new chest, and this time around, we have up to Saida. So I'm pretty sure there will be players asking which unit you should go for and why. And before we start, as usual, most of these Celestial Hypogean characters, they need to be at Supreme tier or Supreme Plus to work. And I'll try to point out units which can work at a lower tier and why, and also point out the generally versatile and high priority targets you want to go for from this chest. So without further ado, let's start with the top 1 must-haves. Yeah, I think I don't need to explain too much, twins. So this unit is the strongest support in the game right now. Probably will remain that way until another Celestial Hypogean support comes in, because this unit's buff is just way too good. Control immunity, haste buff, stats buff, energy regen, heal with a little bit of control, just a little bit of everything, and having the Celestial tag makes it such that in contents where you're using the base factional talent, you can slot Elijah and Layla into the team and get that additional percentage of stats for survival or damage. And generally speaking, Elijah and Layla, they're just really good across different contents. Dream Realm, AFK stages, PvP, so this is a unit which is safe to say you can just push to S+ if you haven't done so. Whether or not to go to the Paragon tier depends on whether or not you use them for PvP, but this unit at S+ is more than sufficient for most contents in the game, and probably one of the unit which probably won't fall off. I won't say they won't, because if they do decide to release another support Celestial Hypogean to sort of take over their position, there is this possibility, but unlikely anytime soon. So that will be for the next Celestial Hypogean to take over. Now, next one. Another unit which I think generally has proven its worth is Reyna. So Reyna is a very good bossing unit, and also good for the offensive PvP side, for the ability to swap out your opponent's positioning, weaken them, and then nuke them down. So Reyna, even though it's not a unit which you think of in terms of being the top support, but in the early game of Dream Realm, Reyna has, on multiple occasions, on multiple seasons, proven its worth for all the different bosses. So similar to the twins itself, I'll say Reyna is another unit which will take another good Celestial Hypogean support to overtake. And if we were to compare between Reyna and twins, I think Reyna has a bigger chance of being replaced because it's a much older Celestial Hypogean unit in the game. So that's one thing about Reyna. But the good thing about Reyna is, unlike all the other Celestial Hypogean character, this unit, you just need to get it to M+ to unlock this ability right here. So S+ is good to have, but then like this buff is not like super duper significant unless you're into that minimal percentages of stats. If you want to be efficient with your resources, Reyna at M+, good for what it does, right? Swap your ally, make the ally tankier, make your enemy weaker. So that's for Reyna. So out of all these bosses right here, as you guys can see, out of the 8 boss, 5 of the bosses have Reyna in the early game meta teams or the top team showcase. So yeah, pretty good unit for the bossing side in the early game at the very least. And like Reyna has always been able to pop in and out for different users. So these 2 units, I think they are safe bets that you can go for without worrying too much whether or not they will fall off with time in the season. Okay. Now, next 2 units which I think they are high priorities. Number 1 is Baron and number 2 is Fresto. So Fresto's position, I think, should be lower than Baron for a few different reasons. Number 1, previously Fresto is the best tank and there weren't many good tank options in the game. But if you were to take a look at the current roster of heroes, for the AFK stage side, we have obviously the usual Iron Armor's tank option. And we even have the likes of Kellen, which you can use as a sponge tank. There's Diamond as well, which you can use as a tank, as a buffer, and also a control unit. There's even Theodore, which is used pretty much in the late game last season as an AFK stage pusher. So overall, there's a lot more tank options, and Fresto's damage output in terms of the bossing compartment, I think it's still there. HP percentage damage and pure damage is just really good. But if we take a look at the bosses right here, I think King Croaker might have a slot for Fresto, because you might want to use Fresto's illusion to soak up the insta-kill, and then Fresto can summon another illusion if you have the EX weapon built up, and that's where you have multiple bodies of Fresto to soak up the insta-kill for this boss in the late game. right? So this will be like the Chris Shelbrook for this season. Necro Dragon, looking at Necro Dragon itself, I think there's a possibility, but there could be more mobile units that run well in the late game, and Ravion is already here. So Ravion is a very mobile unit with a buff as well as a debuff, which could potentially scale into the late game. So Necro Dragon is, a little bit unsure whether or not Fresto will say. Talessa, nope. Fresto will never be used here because he can't touch Talessa, and his buff is not the best for this boss. And then Nocturne Judicator also probably won't be used. Unlikely because there's no buff, there's no debuff for Midnight Hunter. Sigmund is questionable. I'm actually looking at the current best teams for all the different season bosses for this season so far. And I think Fresto might actually fall off for one or two of them. Sigmund is one of them. Like, Sigmund has already been... Sigmund is really a boss which Fresto wasn't seeing much use previous season, so probably not there. Mirage Frostbite is a boss where the buffing mechanics unit, they're doing a lot better. Fresto's damage output might still be okay, but Baron's damage output is proven to be better than Fresto. So if you were to just look at a damage standpoint, I think Baron will probably be better in the late game. So that will be for the different bosses. Magmazard, this is one of the boss which is subjective. There is a possibility Fresto could be good here. Mechanically, I think Fresto is okay, and you can use him to body block your unit. And then for Bloodshroom itself, the ability to synergize with Mikola makes Fresto a potentially good partner here. So that's that. But with regards to the priorities itself, I'll group Baron and Fresto in the same level. Because, if you're going for Baron, you're going for Baron for the late game damage potential and also the potential scaling for the AFK stages. So Baron is used in the AFK stages with Iron Armor's teams to be the additional true damage once he builds up to his hyper buffed up Celestial form. And then in the late game for the previous season of the Dream Realm side, there are multiple occasions where Baron was used as one of the secondary DPS with the second most damage in the team. So he'll probably be that role this season as well, provided Shamira still the strongest. Right? There could be other stronger units, and then it could be Shamira plus other unit. So Baron as well as Fresto, there are two units which I think it's kind of hard to judge, but based off the recency pattern, Baron being the newer unit will probably hang around longer as the damage dealer for the late game side. So I think these two, they are okay. And even if Fresto does fall off a little for the Dream Realm side, I think as a tank, Fresto is still good with the Mauler AFK stage unit, and also just a unit which can be used generally across PvP teams in general. So yeah, these four units, I think they are pretty safe bet all around if you haven't gone for them yet. Now, for the PvP centric units, strong units for the PvP side, Danlia. I think this unit is a unit which gets stronger with time. With more and more powerful ultimate-centric units and ultimate-centric synergy coming into being, if you're a big fan of PvP, Danlia solves a lot of your problem in the PvP with his presence alone. So if you are into PvP and you have built up all the other commonly used unit, Danlia is a really good pick as a good tank that solves a lot of counter issues that you might face. If you see a team like, how do I deal with Shamira? How do I deal with Shamira Pandora? How do I deal with Iron Armors? This is the unit, okay? Now, Atalia, Atalia I think is still really good. In fact, as a standalone carry, Atalia is going to be still good in the early game for the PvP side, but usually this sort of sniper bursty kind of damage-centric character, they get replaced quite easily, right, in terms of design. So this season we have Alice, which is also damage-based, but Alice hasn't proven her worth that she can take over what Atalia does. So there's that. But the second Celestial, third Celestial, there could be a possibility that, this unit might be overtaken. So this is where, I think Atalia isn't really a safe bet, because all these Celestial Hypergene, like I mentioned, as a hyper carry, they have the possibility to be replaced. So unless you are already on your way to complete Atalia, I don't recommend you go for this unit at 1 copy, because at 1 copy, she doesn't do much. And you need her to have quite a bit of stats for her to carry you reliably in the PvP side. For Dahlia's case, this is a unit which, let's say you want to commit, you also need to push to the higher tier, because it's a tank, you need him to stay on the battlefield, so he needs quite a fair bit of stats. But done as a character, I think will have this utility role in the PvP side. So in the long run, like if you were to compare Dun versus Atelier, right now Atelier seems to be stronger, right? You can kill more cons with Atelier, but Dun is a unit which will probably stick around in terms of the PvP side for very long. So this is why I recommend him and Atelier as the PvP recommended unit. Another unit which is pretty good is Saida. So Saida, I think in store teams with Bonitassi, with Tassi teams in general, or just as a very stally unit on her own, is very strong too. So this three, I think they are the big three for PvP, like purely PvP. So if you want one which I think can hold its value in the long run for PvP, I think Dun is the one to go for. But yeah, just don't go for one copy for them, because for PvP, one copy Celestial Hypogean, they're not going to do much. They need their stats, so S or S plus for the PvP centric characters. Kulu is I'll say very situational utility type of unit. So this unit is strong in PvP, don't get me wrong. But if I were to compare her on an individual power level to Atelier and Saida or even Dun, I think Kulu is a little bit below them. But there are certain team setups where if you run a Kulu to block out the opponent's advances, you will just win the fight. So that's how impactful and polarizing this unit is. So out of the 4 units, I think Danya has the longest longevity in terms of the PvP weightage. If you are not sure, whether or not the other units will fall off, Atelier right now is the strongest single target unit that can slot into multiple teams and carry you. And then Saida is also pretty good, and especially good for store teams. And then Kulu for certain counter archetypes as well as certain team archetypes that are more range based. So these 4 are the more PvP centric characters. So from this list over here, for the general utility, just very, very good unit across multiple different game modes. Twins as well as Reina, they are the top tier picks for myself, followed by followed by Baron first, and then Fresto. Okay, as usual, upgrade them to a specific tier, especially for the stats reliant unit. And then for the PvP side, it will be Dun, Atelier, as well as Saida and Kulu, depending on your situation and who you already have built up. And for the other units, not highly recommended. Pull them based on your personal preference. Arak, subjective. Very, very hard to gauge how far he will go this season, but he has already shown signs of falling off. And outside of the bossing side, it's not very scaling, not very flexible like Fresto and Baron, so I wouldn't recommend him. So that's with regards to this Glorious Hero chest. Hopefully this answers your question as to who to go for, and I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye guys!